Here we are.
So, Matt and I decided that we wanted to try to do or start a podcast, and this is our first one. This is our first trial, so bear with us. We've got some technical things to figure out, and we often like to talk about different topics and go down what we call our perspective rabbit holes, and deep dive into things sometimes. And we're gonna try this out. So, my name is Kevin.
My name's Matt.
So the first topic we're going to talk about is holiday lighting and how we got into it. So I will start off. I got into holiday lighting when I saw a very famous video from Matt Johnson. uh, it was on his house, and it was on YouTube. Someone forwarded me a video, and it blew my mind the way the lights were dancing to the music, and it clicked with me. I had the thought, I need to learn how to do this because this looks so much fun. And it took me a couple of years. When I started, I didn't start with the color changing lights. I started with the AC lights, which is just it's on off. From there, I graduated to the pixels and um, developed every year. This will be my fourth year with pixels now, I believe. And
Okay.
so it's growing even bigger this year, bigger than I can even talk about right now. But it's getting bigger.
Yes.
I've got a lot of cool things that are coming up that I'm excited to get started with, and it's been growing. With We use social media. We generate food for the hungry and the needy within our own community, and it's been an amazing experience, learning all the technical side of this, and supporting the community, and just having fun geeking out on Christmas lights. So what about you, man? How did you get started?
Well, I got started this past season, this past um holiday season, Christmas with I just wanted a simple, basic setup, and I called you up and said, "Hey, I'm ready to take the plunge."
Yeah, it's mid-November. I want to take the plunge.
Yeah, yeah, it's very late. I of course you and I had discussed for a long time your lighting experiences, and I knew I'd always wanted to get into the lighting. It just the timing had to be right, and I moved into the new house and I wanted to do something fun. So
Yes.
you were kind enough to guide me and help me, and at the very last minute, and it was a one day build, and it was
Yes, we
amazing.
did. We people. If, a simple house outline can be a one-day build. We have proven that.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of the upfront work in xLights was done by you up beforehand, but um, I was pretty taken aback how much of a difference it is, even a small lighting system compared to just hanging my normal icicle lights. Just what a fun feeling that is to have a lighting setup.
Yeah. So what was the biggest surprise to you in having a light show, or not? Maybe we shouldn't call it a light show, but having these type of lights on your house. What was the biggest surprise to you as far as either the technical side or any of it?
There were a lot of surprises. The one um the lighting, the hanging of the lights was similar to, you know, a normal lighting
Right.
setup,
Hang,
and
yeah, yeah, because the lights that you went with are what you call C9 bulbs. So
the
they're they're uh,
C9s.
they're a standard they're a standard type of light that would hang on your house just like many other Christmas lights would.
Right. I mean, I even bought the C9 light holders at Home Depot,
Right.
along with the frames. We made the PVC frames for the windows.
Yes.
And like you said, like you told me, it's a lot of DIY, and it was actually really fun. I was surprised at how simple you made something that I thought was very complex. You
Yes.
really made it you really made it simple for a beginner to have a basic, I guess, a basic lighting system, and you took away the mystery and the magic and just really made it plug and play for me. That was surprising.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I think that's one of the biggest surprises in the people that can adapt to technology. I guess maybe the easiest. The, I think there's a big illusion. I mean, I had the same illusion, but fortunately, when I was entering into the lighting world, things were starting to get a little simpler, because when
Mm,
I first started getting into it, most of the people that were using the boards were much. It was the boards were much more complicated to set up, and they started becoming much easier with the Falcon controllers, and now we
mm-hmm.
have the Kulp controllers, which are, my opinion, even easier, and that's something I'll be using more this year. Um, and
What
so
was that
I think
again? What
that's
was that called?
the Culp boards, and
Culp.
I can get
Okay.
into that a little bit more. Um,
Right.
but one of the things that was surprising even to me is once I figured it out and understood the technical aspects of it. It was that light that came on, and it was, this isn't that difficult. It's just it's time invested. It's once you do some research and understand what you're looking at and what you're doing, it's actually not that difficult. It's just, as with everything, it's having a little understanding of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you told me, there's no one-stop shop either. I mean, you have to kind of dig and figure out and explore and experiment, and there's a lot of creativity that goes into um, these setups. And I've seen your show grow from, it just keeps building and building and building. You're adding your mega tree, and then you added your screens, and it just keeps growing, and it's it's just very interesting how much you can put into it, and but yet how much creativity you can add to it as well.
Yeah. So I mean, really, the limitation is your the limitation is two things really. It's, well, okay, we'll call it three things. Number one is your money, because people, this is not a cheap hobby. If you're looking for a cheap hobby, steer away or just be a spectator.
Right.
Because once you really
Right.
start getting into this, it's thousands of dollars. Um,
Sure.
your the second limitation is how much space you have. If you have a small area, you are going to be fairly limited in how much you can expand, but you can get creative with that. I've seen some things that people have done where they have limited yard space, and so they've actually built up from their roof and built
Mm.
a a display system on their roof that goes probably just as high as their roof on top of that to create their display.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and uh, and there's also, and the third thing that limits you is your creativity and what you want to do. And with that, you will find that grows every year, because you you start out with a simple house outline, just like I did. My first year with Pixels was a very simple house outline, because
Hmm.
I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't want to get that deep into it without knowing or understanding, what I can and can't do. And I had some misconceptions about the limitations of the hardware, and what I could do and couldn't do. Um, so I just had a very basic house outline, and from there, the next year I added icicle lights and some more things in the yard. And last year I added what we call matrices over the windows, which is just it's basically a really low resolution TV that's captured in mesh netting.
Right. Yeah.
And
Those
I
are
also
amazing.
had a P5 display. So I've kept adding to it and adding to it, and and with the hardware that they have coming out, and the hardware they have, it allows you to add for these things. So really, it's what you want to expand to. And once you have that light show, or the not maybe not you don't even have to have a light show. You can just I know several people that have lights in their house. You were one of them, Matt, that just have
Yep.
lights in their house
Yeah.
and have the animations. They don't advertise anything. They enjoy just having the lights on their house. And so once you do that and you get through a season, you'll start thinking about what else you'd want to add, because once you already have the basic setup, it's so much easier to just add in what you want to add, and um, you might see something that someone else has and think, oh, you know what, I want to add that too.
Yeah.
So
There you've shown me that there's a definite difference between a light display and a light show over the years. I think earlier you had a light display, and as you've progressed through these, I mean, it hasn't been that many years, but your display has turned into a show, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it has certainly become a show, a spectator event.
Yeah,
this this past year,
right.
we actually had to reduce the amount of day. It used to be on every day, every night, for several hours, and it's grown to a point. And I live in a very residential area in a neighborhood where it's not meant for a high amount of traffic. And this past
Hmm.
year, the traffic was crazy, and it was crazy the entire time. And it's definitely become a show. But big things are in the works, and I'm
Yes.
excited for them, for what's to come. Um, so it's you know
You say that there's a lot of people lined up to see your show at your house, but until you're there and then you see the amount of cars that wrap around the street, you don't really
Right.
understand.
Right. That's one of those things that you say there's a lot, but what does a lot
R-
mean? And
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I can. There's I don't know, maybe 30 houses between my house and the end of my street, and
Yeah.
I can't see the end of the cars.
No.
And that's what I mean. I can't see the end of the cars at the end. The end of the cars at the end. Well, you get what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
Um,
and when I come for a visit, I'm trying to get to your house, and there's I get my private parking spot, but I have to get through the traffic to
yes.
actually it's like going to a baseball game or a football game. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, oh man, I got
Yes.
to deal with this traffic.
Yes. Well, solutions are in the works, and
Yes, yes.
we'll be uh, you know uh, uh, announced at a later date. Not that it's some big top secret, but Um,
No.
so if you are so for anyone that's listening, if you want to find out more about lighting, there are several, and I mean several, Facebook groups that my main resource for researching
Hmm.
are Facebook groups. There is
What's your
the
top?
official.
What's your top one or two that you'd want to share?
Well, and I can get into that. Let me start with, there are several Facebook groups, and they what I use depends on what I'm looking for. And a lot of
Mm,
people don't realize that certain groups are tailored, because believe it or not, there are niches inside this niche. So my
mm,
top two are the official xLights support page
mm-hmm,
and Holiday Lighting Think Tank. Those are my
mm,
top two go to. I search them all the time, and they are a great resource, because most of the time if I have a question about something, I don't post it. I
Mm,
go and I do a search on the within the group, and it might take a little bit of time, but I find my answer. Um,
mm-hmm.
there's also we have a Michigan lighting group that's kind of expanded beyond Michigan, but um, that's a good one if you want if you don't want the masses to be commenting. Sometimes if you ask a question, you don't really get the answer you're looking for in a bigger group.
Sure.
But the Michigan group is much smaller, and a lot of times you can get a more direct answer if you have a question, or if
I
you
mean,
want post
odds
a
are
question.
someone has asked the question or has had the problem that a new person has had, or even a person like me going on year two. You know,
Yes. Well,
it's kind of like going to any forum. It's probably you just got to dig a little bit.
yeah. So that's exactly it, and more than likely, with the array of people that are in these groups, someone has either tried or has done what you are wanting to do.
Hmm.
And even if they haven't, there you can find somewhat related material to maybe help you get started. Just like I was looking for, I have the challenge this year of broadcasting my audio through Wi-Fi. That's not the only way I'm
Right.
broadcasting it, but I had the challenge this year of broadcasting it through Wi-Fi, and so I turned to the groups, and that gave me a good starting point because
Hmm.
the solutions that they have within the groups are a little bit more technical than I wanted and weren't really a good executed solution yet. But
Right.
someone had made a comment and mentioned something, and I saw that comment and I did some googling and I found my solution just like that. So and I didn't have
Nice.
to post anything. If you're willing to do a little bit of work on these things and a little bit of self research, these groups are a tremendous resource.
Yeah, and
There's
usually
all
you pick something up along the way too. If you while you're digging, you learn as you're digging down that
yeah
rabbit hole,
yes
if you
yeah
will.
so the like I said, the top two is the official xLight support page, the Holiday Lighting
Hmm.
think tank. There's the Michigan lighting group. There are, if you're wanting to get into the TV like displays, they have those are called panel displays. They have P5 panels, which they have P5, P10, and I said kind of said that in the wrong order, but they actually go down from
Hmm.
there. I think there's P 2.5, and what that means is it's the spacing between each light. So
Okay.
With P10 there's 10 millimeters between each light. With P5 there's 5. You kind of get the point of that.
Right.
And
Is
so
that in mils apart?
yes, millimeters apart. Yes.
Okay.
So the lower the number, the higher resolution you have.
Sure.
So for that specific lighting um, uh,
What are you running?
prop, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
I this last year the display that I had out there was a P5 display.
Okay.
So for that display, there is an actual P10 P5 group that talks just about that because that in itself is a huge topic because there's for one thing, there's the technology to run it is just slightly different. There's a different card to run it. There's
Mm,
different software you have to configure. There's different wiring. There's how do building an enclosure for it because these things we put all of our stuff outside, so you have to make sure that it's waterproof, that it's weatherproof. So
right.
that is a whole niche topic within this niche topic of holiday lighting.
Hmm.
So there's that group, or there's a group for building enclosures, and then when I say enclosure, that means the controller card for the light, the power supply, those type of things that are out in the yard that are
Sure.
actually controlling the lights because inside
Hmm.
that there's several different ways to put that together. And like you said, Matt, there's so much of this hobby is DIY that you need these resources to help you
Right.
accomplish these things. Now, going back a couple of years, and it's even more prevalent now, there are more and more companies started by people in this lighting community that are actually putting out products it's becoming even more plug and play than it was before, because there are companies that are putting controllers together. There are places where you can buy Megatree bases and Megatree rings and poles and all the things that we've done, when we go to Home Depot and buy our
Yeah,
our
PVC
electrical
pipe and
conduit and and
yeah,
and all these fittings and that have nothing to
tie
do with
straps
what they're
upon
what
tie
they're
straps.
intended for.
Mhm.
That there are people that are actually fabricating specific components to light shows that are um, made to adapt to lighting better than what we've been using. For instance, a couple of people have developed um, poles for megatrees that can withstand almost hurricane force winds because of the shape, the construction of the pipe. Um,
Right.
so those type of things are becoming much more prevalent. Now you're going to pay more for them because they're already made, but they are there if you don't want to put together the item yourself, because
Sure.
my Mega Tree
There's
pole,
people out there. Hmm.
my Mega Tree
The
pole
people out
took
there. There's people out there that don't want to put the DIY into it. They just want a cool display, right? They just
exactly.
want it set up.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. There's some things
Of
that I
course.
wish that were already put together for me, because let me tell you, putting together my Megatree pole and system, that took me a couple of months to figure out the logistics behind it, and figuring out how it was going to work, because I felt lost, and I thought, okay, I know this is possible. How do you do this? And
Yeah,
let me
you
tell you, if there was a way, if they had put out a product before then, more than likely I would have bought that, because it's already, it comes with all the parts, it comes with the instructions. You don't have to go to Home Depot, because I constructed my base. So I constructed my base out of wood. I filled it with cement to have
yeah.
a good solid base. Then I've got slip rings. I've got pipe inside pipe with a marine winch to it, and it's
Yeah, the marine
it's
winch
basically
was a surprise to me. The marine wrench. I mean, that was it's like what is man, you've really gone over the top here,
well, we
man.
can we can thank a man named Walter Monkhouse for that. He was on the Great Christmas Light Fight years ago, and
Hmm.
he was the creator of this. It's called an ASAP pole, and that
Hmm.
means a sing a single. Oh shoot, I forgot that. I forgot the acronym. The ASAP pole it's an acronym. Um,
Right.
a I think it's a sleeve and a pole, something like that. Anyways,
Okay.
he was the genius mind that came up with attaching and how to attach a marine winch to a pole that can slide up and
Hmm.
down with lights attached to it.
Right.
So yeah, so more and more, if you want to get into holiday lighting, and don't want to do so much DIY, there are more and more companies that are putting out products. Now these, like I say, these are people that are into lighting, that have done their own display, that they know what they're doing, and they wanted to put their own skills to use and provide service for people that don't want to do the DIY part.
And at the
Um,
same time, the DIY is really fun
it
to
is.
me
It is.
anyways. And it might
Some
be
people,
where
yeah,
you can save some cash, if you like you said, this is an expensive hobby. So if you want to save some cash, you can go to Home Depot and, buy some electrical conduit and make your own.
correct. Yes. Yeah, it's for either or, and a lot of times I don't buy anything that's pre-done, because so many times in this hobby you'll have a situation of, well, okay, that type of product is fine for you, but I need it to do, yours does A, B, and C. I need it to do C, A, C, and D. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
times where you need it slightly different, and you have to adapt to what you want to do. So that's a big reason why I do most of my own um, stuff. The only thing I don't do is I don't put any, boards together. I buy the
Sure.
and with AC lighting was actually the only way you could, before was the only way that you would be buying the components where you would actually put the control board together yourself. But that's a bit too much for me. I very much enjoy my boards being put together for me. Um, so as I said earlier, for the boards, I mostly use Falcon Controllers. Um,
Hmm.
that's been the predominant brand in our hobby. But really, what's coming out that's been out for a couple of years now, and I adapted last year, and I will be adapting much more this year. They're called Kulp Controllers,
Yeah, talk
KULP.
about those.
So
How do you
these
spell
are,
that? KULP?
yes, KULP. So the difference there is in how it in how you configure it. So typically with if you're using a Falcon controller, and I
Hmm.
use a Raspberry Pi to run my show. So there's a setup page for the Falcon that you set up your. So in lighting, we to control everything, we have universes and we have channels. So you'd set up those universes and channels inside the controller, and then you go to your show player, which is in the Raspberry Pi, and you
Hmm.
configure those same universes and channels so that the
Right.
show player knows to tell the controller what to do and when to do it. Now, the biggest difference with the Culp controllers is it's all in one. It's all in the same show players where you configure your controller. It's actually just a different tab. And the big difference with the Culp controllers is they can control more lights in the same amount of output. So
Nice.
the Falcon controllers are somewhat limited into how many lights you can put per port before you start having power loss, which will cause flickers or cause colors that aren't exactly what you want. Um, and also, if you have most of us, most of us program our lights to 40 frames per second. Um, if you put too many lights in your port, that can overload the controller, and it might drop your sequence to 20 frames per second, which isn't a huge noticeable drop, but that does happen. So with Culp controllers, you have more flexibility and more options to put more lights on more ports.
What's
Now
the
that does
difference in amount of lights? Like a Falcon Pi controller can run how many lights, and then Culp is how
well
many?
technically a Falcon controller can run. I believe it's just over 1,000 pixels per port. Now that is at
Okay.
the absolute max. That's with power injection. That's that's the most that pre-programmed that it can run. Real world, it cannot. It doesn't really handle it that well. So
No,
it's just in doing that. It's like anything else. That's like putting everything in your system at maximum capacity. You don't really want to do that. You
for
want
sure.
to maybe do half of that. And the most I've ever done per port is I had my icicle lights there were 448 lights on one port, and I was I was pretty surprised that that worked, and that's probably pushing it to the absolute max that it can comfortably do. So
Hmm.
with
With the Culp.
Culp boards, I don't know the exact number, but I know it's more. You can do it. You can there's I think it's 20 to 30% more lights
Mm.
without power injection. And the way you the way you set it up is you have um, you have your cup controllers, and they all have their own show players within them, and you set them up to
Hmm.
talk to each other. And I used it for the first time this past year with my Mega Tree with the rest of my system. and it worked great. It worked so well that I'm actually purchasing many more controllers this year, and um, they're all Culp. I'm going with Culp across the board for the most part, um,
Do
just because
they just run more stable also? Is it more stable of a platform?
they seem to run a little bit more stable. Yes, in the reports that I'm seeing from the lighting community is that the Culp the cult boards seem to be running better. Not that Falcon runs horribly. Falcon is still a great controller. I still run with it. I will still have Falcon controllers in my system. I will be
Good.
having I'll actually be having more of the what they call a pi cap. I'll be having some of those. So Falcon still
Hmm.
runs a great controller, but I've got some areas that I need some, maybe longer runs or denser props, and
Mm,
the Culp controller seems to be for me the better option to run for those type of props. So that's what
gotcha.
and it's actually a little bit cheaper too. So that's also a benefit. Um,
Oh,
and they have
would
the
you run the Culp controller for your matrices?
yes.
Okay.
What did I run for my matrices? I did not run them for my matrices this year, but I wouldn't hesitate to run them for anything. Um, for the denser props, I would recommend those. They just they seem to run a little better than the Falcon for configuration, because with Falcon you're limited to how many lights you can control, and it's got a threshold, whereas the Culp it has a much wider threshold, so you have more flexibility. If you have lower density props, and when I say lower density and higher density, that just means how many lights are together. So if you have a house like a house outline is not a high density prop. But if you had a
Hmm.
wreath with, if you have, let's say, a 4 foot wreath with 1,000 lights in it, that's a lot of lights in a small amount of area. So that's a high density prop. So and the controller for that, it's going to take a lot of lights to for the port.
For
So
sure.
that's a higher
Mega
density prop.
trees,
Yeah. And
things like that.
the Culp just seems to be, if you're wanting to have that and you're wanting to have other things on that same controller, it just seems to handle it a little bit better. So certain things
Gotcha.
I will continue to run Falcon because it still runs just fine. But other things I'm gonna go with Culp because just I need them more of the flexibility.
Mm. Do you
So
can we talk about xLights a little?
sure,
What
sure. So
have you
with
seen any updates for xLights, or what's
They this
anything
last
new?
year, yeah. So this last year, they made a big update to xLights, and with anything, there's some growing pains. It took me a little bit to figure out what how to use it again, because they changed the configuration and how you set it up, but
Hmm.
it's with X. Okay, let me back this up a little bit. So xLights is how
when was this update?
this
Just so
update
we
was
know.
sometime in 2020. I don't recall
Okay.
when. So to back this up a little bit, xLights is how we program our lights. it's how um, it's how we make them, change colors, how we put effects on them. That's how we control everything. So with um, and they update it frequently. Sometimes the updates they'll fix one thing and break another thing, but the great thing about it is, for one thing, xLights is free. It's an
It's
incredible
free.
piece of software
Yeah,
that is free,
it's amazing.
so you really can't complain too much. Now, I had found that I've recently switched to a Mac, and so I've been using um, a slightly different version. I started having issues with having the most current version crash quite a bit. So
Really?
the great thing that they do is they put every single version they've ever put out, they put it available for you to use. So I did a little. once again, I did a little research for myself, found
Mm-hmm.
out what the latest stable version seemed to be, and that was a version back from last year. And I downloaded that copy, and it runs fine now. It runs great. So
Nice.
that's the great thing about xLights is if you run into problems that you're having um, with the version of the crashing, you can always try a different version. You can go online and see if other people are talking about the same kind of issue and see, because more than likely, if you're having an issue, someone else has had the same issue and they've already
Mm.
tried to find the version that works for them. Because there's so much inside the software that when they work on things, it might affect something else that they don't even realize. So I will usually, when I find a stable version, I will stick with it for quite a long time before I update, just because unless there's a feature that comes out in the software that I want, I don't typically update, because if it's working for me. Now there's some people that update every single time, and that's
Uh-huh.
fine. Those are almost the bug finders. Those are basically the bug
The
finders,
beta testers.
the beta testers, correct. Um, but I typically I will find the version that works for me for the year, or for at least a good 6 months. Um, because the last thing you want to do is you want to be programming and then have xLights constantly crashing on you. So
For sure.
you find what works for you, what works for your setup, the version that works for you, and once I'm past lighting season, then I will update the latest and see how that works. Now, like I said, I did that for this version, and I started having crashing issues, which
Mm.
there's a workaround. So I found the latest version. It was released, I think it was November of last year, so it's not that late. It's not that early of a version, and I installed that, and it's been working just fine.
Have you been working on the new show? Have you found any updates that you've applied to the new show from the latest update, or are you finding yourself falling back to the old standbys because of the almost tedious nature of what is xLights, which I find a lot of fun. Um, is putting on the software end of it. I really enjoy that part of it, which I need to get more into. But have you found anything or new, or are you kind of using the typical standbys?
Yeah, I don't use much of the new features in it. I use most of the things that have probably been around for the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not 4 years, but at least a couple of years. No, for me, it's more developing my sequencing style. The and I'm either starting from absolute scratch, or I will download someone's existing sequence, or even purchase a sequence. And a lot of times, um, uh, for instance, I'm working on Michael Jackson Thriller right now, and
Mm-hmm.
it started as a sequence that I purchased, and I think I've kept maybe 25% of what I purchased. That seems a little crazy, but it it,
No.
it, it worked out for me, because what I bought, because sometimes when you purchase a sequence and you map it to your display, things don't always look the way you want them to. Well,
Mm.
it basically it sparked what I wanted the display to look like, and so I figured out from there what I can do. And so I did use many of the effects, but I changed some of the timing, and how some of the effects um, worked. And
So you
most
kind of bought it
recently,
as a
it
base, and then you
yes.
kind of you made it your own.
Yes, it's more so developing my sequencing technique. I've
Mm-hmm.
recently discovered that I like to add a lot of layers, and I've started copying groups of my props to having multiple of the same thing, so I can play different ways, if that makes any
Mm-hmm.
sense at all. um, So it's just it's been developing my own sequencing style, which I and there's a lot of techniques that I'm picking up now that I haven't used before that are that are becoming really useful when I want to see how this effect looks here or this effect looks there, or grab an effect from another song and throw it into here. Or plus when you're importing effects from another sequence, um, that sometimes your props don't match up with each other, but if you have multiple groups that are somewhat close,
Hmm.
you can actually copy that existing effect to a new area, and that's what I've been doing lately is playing with that, and it's been working out well because then I can see how it looks. I can refine it a little bit, and then make it to what I want.
So you would you say that the hardware where you can buy and purchase things, lights, props. There's a DIY and then there's a purchase. And then on the software side as well, there's shows that you can purchase and then you can just kind of plug and play it to your xLight display.
Yes, and there are you can purchase the controllers, many different props, the lights, and you can purchase the sequences. You can actually hire you can hire individuals in this lighting community. I actually hired one last year to sequence a song for me because I couldn't figure out how I wanted it to look, and it was late in the
Mm.
season it was very late in the season that I decided to add the song. So I actually hired someone to do it for me, and but you can out. There's also a company one that I know is Pixel Pro Displays that they will, if you have the money, they will do everything for you. Even most people that have them create the show for them, they will build your controller, they will order your lights, they will they will create a layout for you in xLights, they will sequence everything for you so that and then they will send everything to you, and all you have to do is put it on your house and hook it up the way that they have it configured. There's also, I believe, the same company. If you want to spend the money, they will also come out and install it for you. I know there are
Wow.
companies out there that will actually install it for you. So literally, all you have to do is, if you have the money, you spend the money, and they will do everything for you. So all you have to have is the house or the property, and they will put everything up for you. So it all depends on what you want, what you can do, how much money you have,
Hmm.
and yeah, and there's companies out there that can make it happen. It all depends on what you're wanting to do and what your budget is.
Yeah, I found my for myself, I enjoyed making the DIY props. And I think my favorite part was trying to, not that I've completed this yet, but making the sequences,
Yes,
attempting to make sequences,
it's a
which I'm
process.
still working on.
It
It is, man, it is, and
there
I'm
Matt. Let
really
me tell you,
enjoying it.
there's still so much that I don't even know to do, and I don't even use that I still have to explore. So don't feel too bad.
It, yeah, I mean, it's almost like you're a DJ creating your own song, and you're like a one man show, and it's just really fun to work
Yeah.
with the X lights, especially when you have it all. You have your,
Yes.
I mean, it's very, I don't want to say it's easy. I think one of the easiest parts is stringing the lights. You take the picture of your house, you put it on X lights, and you string it. And I think that's kind of the easy part. And then the more challenging part is sequencing the lights
It
and to the
is.
song. And then when you hit that play button and you see it come up, you're like, oh man, that is really cool. I can't wait to see that on my house.
Yes, and it's funny because as you go along and as you sequence a song, you will, if you're doing it right, you will
Yeah.
get so sick of every song that you sequence because you are going to have to listen to it 1,000 times. I am very sick of Thriller right now because I've listened to it so many times. I mean, because it's just like recording a song. You know, you do things over and over and over and over and over, and to get things
Yeah.
so that they line up to the beat or something, you have to listen to it and watch it over and over and over and over to make sure that you're hitting the timing marks right. Because if I've seen displays that aren't timed quite right, and it's a
Hmm.
big, I notice it big time. But if you see displays that hit just right, boy, man, you don't even think about it. You're enjoying what you're seeing. You're enjoying what you're hearing. So you
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
get tired of it. But then by the time that you put it on your house and you play it and you see all your hard work come to fruition, man, that's a great
Yeah.
feeling.
I tell you, when I saw your lights when they were talking with the mouth, the movements to Christmas Vacation, your
Yes.
intro, I was just floored at the timing you had for that. I was like, man,
Yeah,
that's
and
I
that's
gotta
another
get
skill
there, man.
within.
I gotta
Yeah,
get to that level.
I'll train you. But yeah, that is a whole other side within xLights of having a singing face programmed. Is that it takes a lot of time, takes patience, and if you think you're sick of the song sequencing, you'll be even more sick of it after you've programmed the lyrics to it. But when it all comes out and the mouth moves perfectly to the lyrics, it's even better. And
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
there's resources for that also to how to program the mouth movements. It's very similar to how um, how animators program and develop the mouth movements for cartoons and like any of the Pixar movies. It's a very similar
Hmm.
process.
Hmm. Another nice thing about X-Lights is I remember you told me they gave, like last year they gave away a sequence. Do they do that every year?
So there's a project called X Lights Around the World, where they figure out. They put a poll up and they take a vote from the community of which song should we do this year, and there are that once they figure out the song, there is a group of somewhere between 2 and 4 people that are extremely talented in sequencing, and they program a song, and then they put it out for everyone to use, and it's free to download. You can map it to your show. They use a lot of similar props that other people use, so it's easy to map to your house. And if you get a chance, you could film your house with this sequence, and then at the end of the year, they put that together in a video and show all of all of these houses that have the same sequence in
Mm-hmm.
in this video, and
Big
it's
or
it's
small,
it's really
right?
cool to see. Yeah, oh, absolutely, big or small. And what's really cool about the project is you don't even have to use their sequence if you don't want to. If you want to create your own sequence to that same song, they will accept that also. Um,
Oh.
I didn't get a chance this past year, but it has grown huge, like tremendously
Mm-hmm.
huge. I think they had over 1,000 submissions this past year, and as long as I say submissions, but as long as you submit your video by their deadline, you will be in the video that they put together. So it's not like you're trying to get in and win a contest. It's just it's
They
if
splice it
you
in. They splice in your
yes,
house,
they
right?
splice in your house. Yes, whether it's and they alternate between 4 displays at once to 1 display at once, 16 displays at once, and they time that to the music. So it's a really cool project, and there's also a lot of free sequences on. There's a Google Share Drive that people will upload sequences that they make, and you can use them also. Some
Hmm.
are great, some are okay. Um, at a very minimum, you can download it and see how someone has done something. And it might give you an idea for something else. I've done that a
Yeah,
lot.
like you said you did with Thriller. You used your 25% and made it your own. You know, you could go
Yes.
in there and grab one of the sequences and
Yes.
get you started at least.
Which
You know,
that's
sometimes that's half the battle.
I rarely, even when I buy sequences, it's not that, and it's not even close to just, it's never even close to just buying the sequence, importing it, and I'm done. There's always many things that I either want or have to change about it to get it to look right. So even with the purchased sequences, it's still my own, I guess, flavor on it, um, as far as what it looks like. So it's a lot of
Yeah, I
times
mean, all houses are
it's my
different,
starting
right? And
point,
you've got
right?
different props, and I mean,
Yes.
sometimes the sequence I saw, they usually include a mega tree, but you know, if you don't have a mega tree, you could just cut that out and
Yes, because
make
some,
it your
yeah,
own.
for instance, some of the sequences that I referenced or I'm getting, um, they have a mega tree, and for Halloween, because some people will use a mega tree for Halloween, and I'm actually
Hmm.
I map those things to, I have a giant spider web that I'm going to put out, and I can map that effect to the spider web, and with a few little tweaks, it can, it can look really cool. So
Oh, I
it's
see what
it's
you
all
mean.
about it's all about playing with the effects, playing with how they map to the lights and what you want them to look
Hmm.
like.
So maybe you'd have the spider on top of the tree, and then you'd have this like a spider web going down.
Yes, well,
Is that
some
what you're?
people, instead of having, they'll have the tree, and instead of having a star at the
Mm,
top, they'll put a spider,
yeah,
or they
yeah.
even put a star and just have it, because if you make it, orange, green, and purple, all of a sudden it kind of looks Halloweenish. So it's all about, what you want to do with what you have, and um,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, the big benefit to having the mega tree out there for Halloween is you already have it out there for Halloween, so it's already done for Christmas.
Yeah. Well, that's something I've found browsing through the xLight tutorials and looking at your house, how you were able to. I know you talked about people building up, but I really enjoy the depth effects. Like you when you added your talking lights and your Christmas tree, and for Halloween your graveyard um, headstones. I really like how you build forward, give it some depth,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
I've seen some tutorials where someone's house is on a corner lot, so they've got even things on the other side there to give
Yes.
it even more craziness, you know.
Yes. Yes. And with X-Lights becoming, you can do, you can have a 3D layout, and you can take
Hmm.
pictures of your house and really create it so that it looks, you can sequence it just like how people are seeing it. So
Right.
that's the cool aspect of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered everything,
We have. We
everything to the
have.
abundance that we wanted to. See, people,
We've gone past
I
our
don't lie when
test
I say
time.
we can go down rabbit holes. So
But that's good. That's good.
yes, yes. So I think we've covered everything that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Everyone, and if you have questions about things, you can message us. We'll figure out how you can do that. We hope to, in the future, have more of these discussions, not necessarily about lighting. I'm sure we will have more discussions about lighting, but we're going
Oh
to
yeah.
discuss, all kinds of different things between lighting, between Marvel, between Star Wars. We can talk about home improvement. We'll talk about, anything and everything. So it's
You
just a
got
couple
it.
of guys that like to go down, rabbit holes, and get into deep discussions about things that we enjoy, and maybe provide some entertainment, some information, whatever you want. Help you pass the time, and yeah, we'll
E-
go from here and see where it goes.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
Sounds good.
all right. Well, I've been Kevin. That's been Matt. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.